what is your best BAM for the buck? We're gonna find out as we test 2.5 versus 3-inch exhaust and expensive mufflers versus budget mufflers. This is Engine Masters presented by AMSOIL and sponsored by Mr. Gasket and Earl's Vapor Guard Hose. Remember back in Engine Masters episode 9, we did a test of 2.5 versus 3-inch exhaust tubing on a big block Chevy that made 600 horsepower, and the 3-inch exhaust was way better. But a whole bunch of the audience said, that's great, what about the rest of us who don't have 600 horsepower? You wanted to see stuff for normal guys who just have mild engines with typical bolt-ons and want to know what exhaust to buy, and so that's what we're going to do right here. And we're going to do it with this engine that only makes about 345 horsepower. This is like an L98 out of a 3rd-gen Camaro. It's a small block Chevy, it's 350 cubic inches. That's about all we know about what's inside this thing. It's been sitting around Westech Performance for so long, everyone has forgotten what camshaft's in it. We do know it's got this 650 Holley on it, it's got an Edelbrock air gap dual plane intake manifold. None of that matters as much as the power it's making, which is about 345, because that dictates how much air it's moving through the exhaust system. Which means what we learn here today as we test 2.5 versus 3-inch exhaust and bucks up mufflers versus cheap mufflers, that is all going to apply to any engine making about the same power level. So let's roll the thing in the dyno right now. I'm going to have to figure out what kind of AMSOIL to put in this complete mystery engine. Then we're going to fire it up and show you how much power it makes first with either 2.5 or 3-inch exhaust. We're pretty sure this engine is that L98 factory motor, but you know, we're not positive, so we're gonna go with a lot of protection, the AMSOIL Premium Protection 1040. You wanna know a secret? Watch how you can put oil into an engine really quickly. You know how I normally go for the pour? Instead, shove it in there and go for the squeeze. Bam! Full quart in the engine already. See that? That was magic right there. You will use that in your life. For this test, we did a baseline run with 2.5-inch exhaust pipe. Test A is going to show you how swapping out to 3-inch pipe compares to that baseline with 2.5-inch pipe. Both tests are being done with the MagnaFlow straight-through mufflers. Now, the baseline test with 2.5-inch piping gave us 400 pound-feet of torque at 3,800 RPM and 345 horsepower at 5,100 RPM. Now we're gonna find out what happens when we go to that 3-inch pipe. I think the only difference we're gonna see is in variance of
tone,
of air temperature and water temperature and oil temperature. I mean,
what about variance in tone, exhaust note?
It's gonna sound a little bit throatier, of course.
It's gonna be a lot louder.
Yeah, but do you think it's going to make more power?
You know, like I said, in the last 15 years, I don't remember doing this test, and anything before that, I don't remember, period.
Yeah.
So
I'm just presuming that 350 horsepower has plenty of room to get out of a 2.5-inch pipe, but I don't know. He thinks it's going to be fired up. Let's just do this. I don't know what to say, so I'm not saying anything. Go ahead.
And the answer is?
Ready? Boom. Nada. There is no difference. We're talking, that's 1/4 of a horsepower if you can even see the line separating. It's the same.
Which means we're not surprised, and he was wrong, and we're right.
Yeah, and we didn't bet.
The difference is with the 2.5, they know you have a 350-inch motor, and with the 3-inch, they think you have a 383.
So you have all the noise and none of the advantages.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so what I really want to know, since this makes no difference, is those are expensive mufflers. I think they're virtually $100 each. Stainless steel, nice MagnaFlow, straight through and everything. What if you bought a $27 Thresh muffler? Because if you have a 350 horsepower small block, you're probably buying cheap mufflers, right?
I think you'd be surprised by the results.
Thanks.
He says that every test.
Well, let's find out. I want to go put the little thrush on there and see if it makes a difference. I bet it kills some power.
I bet it doesn't.
Then let's go find out.
It'll kill power.
Both of those tests were with a MagnaFlow muffler, which is a stainless steel design. It's a really nice piece. These things have a straight through core. Actually, of course, this has a curvature in it because it's a center in, side out, or a side in, center out. You can run it either way because there's no restriction in it. It goes right through the middle. It has a perforated core with some packing in it to attenuate sound, but obviously it doesn't affect horsepower in what we just tested, which was 2.5 versus 3-inch exhaust, and obviously it made no difference on that 350 Chevy at all. Now here's what you can deduce from that. First of all, 2.5-inch exhaust with a good muffler is all you need for 350 horsepower, and therefore for any amount of power less than that. Now the other thing is, you'll read a lot of times people saying don't go to a bigger diameter exhaust pipe or you're gonna lose torque because of a sound wave resonance or because of back pressure. We didn't see any of that at all. The 2.5 and the 3 were exactly the same. But because of that, I said to these guys, man, I wanna know more. That MagnaFlow costs $108. What happens if I use a muffler that costs $40? And that's what this is. It is the Thrush Hush muffler. I've used these things my whole life. This is the ultimate teenage muscle car muffler. See them all the time. This one's 3-inch in, 3-inch out. Now the difference is, this has a block in it that it uses to attenuate sound. It is not straight through. So the question is that gonna hurt power? And we're gonna go find out because we're gonna throw this in the exact same exhaust system, which is the 3-incher on our 350 Chevy. But before we run it, here's one more thing you need to know. On this budget muffler, it may have a 3-inch pipe, but if you look inside there, it necks down to like 2.5, maybe even 2.25. It seems like every case is the same regardless of the inlet and outlet size, and the big restriction is in the core. That could hurt it. Install it.
Yes, sir.
I'm here for the expert tutelage. You're the wrench.
I understand the difference between, I know where I am on the ladder.
I dented your muffler.
Bam. We might have fallen down on the symmetry a little bit, but I think the power is all right.
Ah, close enough.
Well, Relay didn't get that clock 90 degrees.
I know. Relay is a hack.
I know.
Okay, low buck muffler, ready to go.
Yeah.
I say it loses power. How about you?
I say it stays the same.
Really?
I say, I don't know. Let's find out.
Which is really the correct answer,
Yes,
because
it
none of
is.
us know.
I know.
Sounds mellow. Listen to that.
Wow, it's quieter. And it killed some power.
Yeah.
But
It killed more than a little.
did it?
Killed a lot.
So that's it right there. Here is our original test with the 3-inch MagnaFlow muffler that is just straight through, and you compare that to the Thrush at a 3-inch, and it's just making between 5 and 15 fewer power numbers at every point in both the horsepower curve and the torque curve.
That's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
So it's that example of where you get what you pay for.
Yeah, to change to the Thrush means you're saving basically $50 a muffler, so for $100 for a pair of mufflers, that's what you're giving
I
up.
will tell you that that kind of power difference for $100 total,
Is really hard to get.
yeah, that's a pretty good bargain.
Yeah, so the better muffler is definitely worth it. And here's the other thing that we know. The 3-inch Thrush made less power than the 2.5-inch MagnaFlow. Now, if you think about that for a minute, a bunch of 2.5-inch piping is way cheaper than 3-inch steel, so you save some money and it's lighter.
Yeah.
So if you had the choice right now of running a great muffler on a 2.5-inch system versus a budget muffler on a 3-inch system,
I think the answer is the MagnaFlow with the 2.5 on this.
on this particular
Power
engine,
level.
that's what you do. We know that on 600 horsepower, you choose the bigger.
You get all the power, you save some weight, it's less expensive. overall.
But there's
probably.
one consideration neither of you have mentioned, and that's sound. That's a lot quieter than the MagnaFlow straight-through muffler. For a
is.
lot of guys, I mean, they want
That's
a
a
quieter
big
sound.
deal, yeah. This one is much quieter, so that is a distinct benefit for a lot of people of the Hush Thrush, or Thrush Hush.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a big difference in tone at part throttle cruising?
Oh yeah. Any of the straight through mufflers, they blat more than a muffler like the Thrush with a block plate. And I think a lot of that can be attenuated with a crossover tube, which we don't have, but that's a test for another day. So, between you and me,
Yeah?
do you think Brulet's losing his edge?
Why?
Well, I just noticed how you can bring in a 1200 horsepower like NA big block Chevy, and he gets more excited about when a 350 Chevy makes quiet 340 horsepower. What's with that?
I don't know. It must be old age creeping up on him.
How come we bring in like the most boring average test ever with mufflers on a 350 horsepower motor and it still ends up being pretty interesting?
I've got to say, I was kind of excited about it too, so it wasn't just Brule. I really wanted to know it, and really, my bigger is better always theory kind of let me down.
It did, I know. Well, but the thing is, like the real world, like for all of us, like for your pickup truck that you want to drive every day, you don't want the thing rapping with a huge muffler that's gonna drone your brains out.
No, I really want it quiet, but I'm not really willing to give up much horsepower.
So are you a 2.5-inch MagnaFlow guy? See, because I'm still a 2.5-inch Thrush guy. If I'm putting together something I don't care that much about acceleration, I'll just get the cheaper muffler because I'm probably not gonna own the vehicle long enough to justify the lifespan of the stainless steel muffler that makes another 15 horsepower.
Well, I'm kind of aiming for 500 horsepower in the truck, so I probably will be the MagnaFlow guy. But on a lower horsepower engine like this, the Thrush is a way better choice if you want a quiet car that you can actually drive around and live with on a day-to-day basis.
When we do these tests, I always find myself thinking kind of more philosophically about it than I did before we walked in the door and tested them. It's like, oh yeah, it makes more power. I want the thing that makes more power. But then I often realize, well, I'm only losing 15 throughout the curve. Am I really gonna feel that? Am I really gonna care? Do I wanna save the 80 bucks on mufflers and the however much on tubing? I don't know, it's always a lot to think about. That's why I like Engine Masters.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the 15 bucks or 50 bucks or 80 bucks, I'll forget about long before I get over a lot of exhaust noise and living with it day in and day out.
Okay, good point.
It's a toss-up. I'm undecided. I'm more confused than ever.
And that's why we do Engine Masters. No matter what we're testing, we always walk in with one set of questions and ideas and walk out with another. Check us out every time as we deal with like the 1200 horsepower big blocks, the 340 horsepower small blocks. It's what we do on Engine Masters, which is presented by AMSOIL, sponsored by Mr. Gasket and Earl's Vapor Guard, and you can watch it on either YouTube or Motor Trend On Demand or now on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime, really?
Oh, we're big time now.
Wow.
All right?
Yeah.
Peace out. Travis, what are you doing? You want to come run the engine?
I'll run it.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, it means that I get to direct the scene
You gonna come over here?
and you get to run the motor.
Wow. Never thought I'd smoke a compliment.
I thought Brulio was going to be a camera op.
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk over there as soon as
You
we
can put on
get
headphones
to...
if you want. It's just,
Oh, of course.
He's gonna direct.
I want to put your earbuds in my ear.
Right.
You see that big red button that says stop, Dave?
Yep, I'm on it.
Okay, that's your job. Give it a little gas. Just go to wide open and let it stabilize. Go to wide open first. All the way. All the way. Push it hard. Push the button.
Super trap.
All right, G.
super difficult. Awesome.